Hi there. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Attorney Tina Patterson, Principal Attorney at Patterson Justice Council, right here in Detroit, Michigan, where we help business owners, homeowners, and property owners protect their property, have their rights respected, and leave legacies to their lineage. So, today we are going to be talking about one of the biggest sources of conflict, of controversy that I see in all of my cases, and it is who you love the most, or who you love can hurt you the most. And I'm talking about the people that we surround ourselves with. Um, there are always conflicts involved, right? Because we may not agree with this position. We may not, we have things come up that are opposed to us. Obviously, the court process itself is adversarial in nature, or we're making plans for the future that one or more of our beneficiaries, like especially our children, may not agree with. And so this comes up all the time. And I always tell my clients going to court is easy. Okay, solving that legal problem is easy. In fact, there are many ways to do it, right? We can do X, Y, or Z, and we can have them all lined up in that order. But the hard part is always, always, always confronting sour relationships with loved ones. Okay, there's always going to be one, and it only takes that one, but there's always going to be one, usually in the family, that all the rest just don't agree with, can't get along with. And because of that one, whether they are combative or whether they are just in disagreement, just because of that one, a lot of plans can go awry. And that's what makes the problem even balloon bigger than it even really is. I've said so many times, it's not the problem. It's not the house. It's not the property. It's not any of this. It's the person. It's that relationship. Okay, so that's why the title of the video, and then the title on the thumbnail is um, "Who You Love Can Hurt Most." But the title of the video itself is "Having the Talk with Your Family Beyond Death," because you really need to talk these things out. A lot of times, the source of conflict just goes over for so long that we don't even want to talk anymore, or we never had the talk. So there's all this questions in the air, but we're going to get through it today. Okay. We are going to talk about why it's so important and how we can try to feel the issue through before it becomes something that just manifests into a problem we don't even need, honestly. Okay. So we're going to talk about 3 reasons why having these talks are so important, so crucial. And in all matters, you want to be upfront and proactive immediately, because the issue, again, only grows bigger, worse, and harder to solve over time. So if you want to make it easier, smaller, and not take that much time, get to it right away. And also less expensive. All right. So the 3 reasons why it's so important to have these talks with your family members, and oftentimes it is family members. In a business, it can be business owners or partners, but we're talking about the people that are usually the closest degrees to us, that within our circle, within our bloodline, within our family, within our business, that would almost be natural heirs, if you will, right? People that are naturally going to either succeed us or that we naturally want to involve in the process, but they just don't mesh all the time. All right. So the 3 reasons why it's so important to have these talks. Obviously, number one up front is it clears confusion. If you have something written in place, or if you've had these talks and everybody is in agreement and everybody knows, it can clear so much confusion. How? Because there are no decisions left up for someone else to make. You make the decision. There are no dominating opinions, no dominating sides, and there are no debates. Okay, so I've had so many, just in the last 6 months, consultations with clients where there's it's usually over the family home. There's a lot of issues that in debates that go along with the family home. What's going to happen to it? Somebody wants to keep it, somebody wants to sell it, and many times the way that maybe the title was done or the paperwork was done, it has to be a unanimous decision, and we'll get into why that's always a bad idea, but you can kind of get a glimpse of it here. So because it usually has to be a unanimous decision, there's always going to be one that wants to pull the strings, and that's just going to rip everything apart. Okay. But if you are in accord, if you have these talks with the family, if you have the right paperwork in place, you can clear up that confusion so that nobody has a dominating opinion, so that there are no decisions left up for anyone else to make, and there are no debates about what to do with what. We know who's going to be in charge, we know who's going to get what, we know where it's going to go, how it's going to happen. All the questions are answered. That's why it's so important to have these talks. Even if it's a family member that we don't get along with, we don't even see anymore, they don't live in state anymore. So what? Have the talk anyway. Be upfront. Be proactive. And if they don't agree, if they still want to fight, guess what? That's why we have point number 2. Okay. Just having something in place, having this common communication in place would, number 2, combat conflict. Okay. And what does that mean? First, it means we can manage motives. Okay. So a lot of times what I've seen is there's usually a sibling, one, there's usually only one who doesn't come around and is not involved until the last remaining parent. And these are grown people, by the way. Okay. These are people that are well into their 50s, maybe even 60s. But, final parent passes away. There's a piece of property and they want to be the manager. They want to be the one that decides what to do with it, when, how, who, whether they are left in charge or not. They want to be the one. Okay. So managing motives, because once you have the paperwork in place and you've had the discussion with the family and they know that this is not what that person wanted, the motive behind why this person is all of a sudden trying to take over is left in the dust. We can't do that. No, we know why you're doing it now. If there was no, let's say, will in place, or if there was no, deed that would pass the property down the way that they wanted to be passed down, if none of that was in place, then the person who's now trying to take control, they have a bigger argument. They can run with that. They can really take that and shape it however they want to try to get maybe a judge to rule in their favor, or to get an attorney and kind of strong arm the other siblings, which I'm seeing happening a lot. Trust me, like I said, just in the last 6 months. Okay. Without that center of control, from having the talk initially, from clearing up all that confusion, without that in place, then the motives run wild. But when you have it in place, even if they want to act crazy, it doesn't matter, because nope, we can't do that, because according to X, Y, and Z, this is how it's going to go. So you can combat that conflict right away by managing that motive. And you can also mitigate what we would call, let's call it malintent. Okay. You can mitigate somebody wanting to act in bad faith. You can mitigate somebody wanting to do things that are just bad in spirit or harmful, right, to other heirs, to their own siblings. A lot of times you can mitigate that because we've already had the talk. Again, we've already put the proper paperwork in place. We've already discussed it openly with the whole family. The whole family knows it. These are witnesses. Again, these are testimonies now. A lot of times I think we take for granted the communication we have with other people and how we manage those relationships. Because if you are talking openly and honestly with them, what a lot of times is, if we have to go to court, when it comes down to it, we can get these people on our side, right? Because the relationship is good, is solid. Again, a lot of times it's just one. It's really just one who is, just wanting to be in control, wanting to have it their way, and really, what the case is, they might have had some kind of influence over a last remaining parent, right? Or maybe they were a favorite or something like that. But a lot of times what I've seen is that they're just one and they're only out there by themselves. They're really no others. And these are out of siblings from 3 to 5 to 7 to, they're really just the one. All the other siblings are aligned together, but just that one will try to usurp it all. Okay. But again, there's power in numbers. So it's very important to have these talks, because the more even if it's just one that wants to disagree, the more they're in agreement, we can mold that into the discussion that we need to have to make a more just outcome for everybody. Okay. So yes, conflict is going to come up. It's okay. I know many clients that I've spoken with are not comfortable with conflict, or they have family members who are not comfortable with conflict, while that one is saying, let's go, right? Let's go to court, let's take it there. And that's where they want to start. And they don't even want to start with cordial communication or with a family friendly relationship kind of discussion. No, they just want to go straight to court. And that's okay. We can do that, right? That's what attorneys are trained for. But it's going to save you a whole lot of time, a whole lot of expense, a whole lot of mental energy and stress too, if you really just hash it out civilly, justly, and like family, right? Because you're all of the same blood many times, but they just don't agree. And so I'm often counseling my clients to tell them, start there. I don't start in court. I know that that's the end result, right? That's kind of the last result. That's always the last place to go for me. That's always, no other options, then we'll go to court. But I'm always telling my clients, start with the communication, start with the conversation. Even if it's somebody you don't necessarily get along with, if they can be talked to, talk to them. Okay. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. Then we can take it where we need to go. But, again, having these discussions will oftentimes combat the conflict. And if you need to go to court, then go. Don't be afraid of the conflict. I tell clients that so often. I tell family members that so often who are having a problem, or, I hear it in other business discussions, because people's personalities are different. So everybody's not going to want to take on the fight, and that's okay. But what are you losing by not taking on that fight? I've had a video you can go through. It might be a video series about what will you fight for. There are several things that are always worth the fight. Family is one of them, right? Especially like our children that we care for so much, our parents that we care for so much. We don't want to see anything bad happen to them. The property can be one of them, because that's our stronghold. That's our place of safety, of refuge. It's our economic base, right? The family home, especially. It would be such a waste and such a shame for it to be in the family for decades and then be lost over a little disagreement. And that happens, unfortunately, or over somebody that's just neglectful of taking care of the property. That happens all the time. Is that something worth fighting for? Right? And if it really is, don't let it go without a fight. That's just, life. That's really just life. So don't be afraid of that. So again, thinking about these things, having the conversations, it will combat conflict. Okay, even if it shows up, there are ways to combat it just through words, just by talking, just by getting an agreement with other people. And then the third reason why it's really important to have these conversations is because it will create consistency. It creates clarity. It creates control. You have this center of control that you're operating from. Okay, I want Family House to go to A and B, or I want it to go to A, B, C, and D. So that way E is not over here trying to take it all, because there's something firmly in place. That's what happens. And what does it create? Once you have this in place, it will create unity, because the family's all acting on one accord. It'll create harmony, right? There's no room for the fights. There's no room for the debates, because we already know what's going to happen. And it's going to create synergy, right? You can go from this place to that and not worry about who's going to come at you on what side. No, everything's already in place. We already had the talk. We've already had the discussion. We've already made the proper documentation, right? We already got the will paperwork done, or the deed paperwork, whatever it is. We already have it in place, and you know what it is. So don't try to come around here, with foolishness, saying that, oh, that's not what they meant, or trying to say, well, they actually meant for me to be in charge. I mean, I've seen this happen. And I have to counsel clients through it, because it just brings a lot of mental grief and stress too, because many times, again, these are grown people and these are their siblings, right? These are the people that they've known since childhood. Maybe they were best friends back in the day, and whatever happened or whatever personality developed, now they have to deal with that person where they are. And I can see sometimes the looks in my clients' eyes where they don't want to go there, right? Because that's still their brother, or that's still their sister. They don't want to fight like that. But oftentimes there's no other way, because that person is just it's just what it is. That's just what it is. And I'm never advocating to my clients to just be mean or malicious and go in there with that kind of spirit. Again, we always start with the conversation. If a conversation can be had, if this person can be persuaded that, you know what, We don't need this big old fight. And like, notice I said not convinced. You're not trying to get them to do something they don't want to do, but just persuade them that, hey, it's actually in your best interest not to go into this big fight, because it's going to cost you money too. It's going to cost you time too. It's going to cost you expense also. You're going to exhaust energy. Do you want to do all that for, honestly, sometimes it's just control, especially when it comes to like a family home. The home might not even be worth a lot of money. A lot of times what I'll see is that they're not even really in it for the money. They just want control. Is it worth that? Can you have that conversation first? And if you can't, then you can move up the conflict ladder, if you will. But again, court is always last. Don't ever start there, because when you start there, all the other options are really off the table. Don't do that. All right. And then I have a bonus. So let's talk about the 3 things we talked about first of why having this discussion is so important. So again, it will clear confusion, right? It will combat conflict if somebody still wants to go and, kind of exert their own control. We have this in place already. So we cleared the confusion, we combated the conflict, and we have created consistency, clarity, and control. And number 4 is it commands changes. So again, that's why having these talks are very important, but you don't just do it one time. Notice I said talks, plural, okay? Don't do it just once, because people change. People change, situations change, circumstances change, families change. They add members over time, they lose members over time. I was at a presentation last month, and I was talking about just how important change is, especially when it comes to creating a will, a trust, estate planning, for any life circumstances that happen. So I mentioned how Kobe Bryant, right, the late great Kobe Bryant, passed away tragically so young. He was only 41 years old, I believe. And he just had a newborn baby, or his youngest daughter was maybe 6 months old when he passed away. And we all know that Kobe was a very meticulous, detail-oriented kind of person. So he had a trust in place for his family, right? He did all the right things in that regard, but life happened, right? And unfortunately and unexpectedly, it ended. And it ended before his youngest daughter, who was only 6 months old, could be added to the trust. And so his wife, his widow, Vanessa, had to petition the court to change the trust, amend the trust, so that their youngest daughter could also benefit, right? And so we can understand, her being so little, and obviously him being so young, thinking that he had more time to add her there, but that's just not what happened. But again, change is necessary. Change happens. You cannot control change, but you can control how you react to change and how you adjust to changes in your life. When it comes to the areas of estate planning, don't do it one time. Do not do it one time. I've seen parents, and when I say parents, elderly couples, maybe in their 70s, 80s or so, sometimes 60s, they'll do a will, but then never update it. And so, you're going from a will that was done back in the 90s, right? Or a will that was done maybe 10 years ago, and now everything's different. Don't allow that much time to go by. So it commands changes. Always have these open and honest discussions with the family. Take the matter into your own hands. Change it as necessary. Now, I will warn against too many too soon. I also remember having a client some years back who was an elderly gentleman in his 70s, very nice fellow, but was wanting to change, like every month or so. And I advised against that, because this is not something that you go about on a whim, right? I would say quarterly, you would want to advise at the minimum quarterly. Usually most people do it every year. And again, Kobe had 6 months. So 3, 6, 9, 12 months, right? Kind of think about it in those cycles. I think that's a very good place to start. But you don't want to do it every month, because that's just too constant. You never developed consistency with your planning in that way. Okay, so you want to, again, like that was the last point, create consistency. You want that. But then changes will be commanded as time moves on, as people move on, as families change, and things develop in ways that were not anticipated maybe when the first plan was done. Okay, so I hope you all enjoy this video. Again, why those you love most can hurt you the most, and why having these talks with especially family is so important. please don't come to my office and talk about this with me because it can be very uncomfortable. Um, it can be very emotional, I will say, right? We're all people, we all feel things. And who really wants to fight their siblings, right? Or fight their parents? We don't want to, but sometimes this is how it boils down. And if we can avoid that, if we can keep the family harmony together, if we can keep the relationship strong, even if it's sour, if we can, sweeten it up a little bit, right? So that it's not bitter and it just eventually dies off. Because that's one of the, I think, worst things that can happen is that a relationship dies before the person dies, right? And then you never have time to recreate or to recultivate that relationship. And if that's what you're going to do, by all means, but think about if that's something that you actually want, if that's something that's actually desirable. Okay, so thank you for tuning in. I hope you find value in this video. If you do, please like and subscribe to the channel. We are live every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And until then, I will see you soon. Bye.